Hello, Cubs fans, and welcome to a brand new edition of Cubs on Tap. I am Ron Luce. Come to you a little bit later after the end of the game here, about 30 minutes after the game. I'm joined by the cheese man, Mr. Joey Ricotta. My friend, first off, how are you doing tonight?
I'm good. I can't say I'm bad because we didn't get our hearts torn out, right? Like, we were expecting to get our hearts torn out, and maybe that's why it felt like we weren't going to get our hearts torn out anyways, because of the fact that we already felt like the inevitable was going to happen. And then I guess it's more like surprise and shock at this point at what happened at the deadline, more than anything. So I'm not bad. I'm bad because the Cubs got stomped by the Cardinals. But if I'm being 100% honest with you, I was outside, not only in the weeds with Twitter and diving into some of these prospects, but literally in the weeds mowing my grass at the start of the game. Because once I heard Jed Hoyer talk, I'm like, I don't really care about this game right here. I know it's the Cardinals, but I got to get stuff done. I've been in front of the computer all day. I've been on my phone all day. I need some fresh air. I need to mow the grass. So that's what I'm going to do. How are you doing?
Yeah, I'm all right, man. I can relate, right? It was a chaotic day, and I think you could really feel that kind of almost lack of urgency because of the stress today, even in the clubhouse and with the guys on the field. I think that's reflective in the 6-0 loss that we saw tonight. Obviously, the Cardinals were in a very different position. It was either, pretty much Soto or bust for them, right? Like it wasn't terribly stressful of a deadline. Whereas for Cubs fans, as you mentioned, a lot of thought that, shit was going to hit the fan. And then when it didn't hit the fan, everybody was kind of like looking around like, so what do we do now? But let's get into some of that. And we'll start quickly with the game here. Unfortunately, we're talking about an absolute barn burner here. Cubs lose 6-0 to the St. Louis Cardinals. Just quick overviews of this one. The big bats come alive for the Cardinals. Obviously, home runs from Carlson, who we joked from the Cubs on Tap account. The Dylan don't trade me for Juan Soto Carlson. He went yard on the Cubs tonight, as did Goldschmidt for his 25th, and Arenado hit his 20th of the season. So lots of power all the way around. Goldschmidt, 3 ribbies in this one. He's already up to 81 on the season, having a hell of a year, batting .332. He's just stupid video game numbers. He's up there for NL MVP, let's be honest. But continuing along, Keegan, not so great tonight. On the flip side, Adam Wainwright, I can't wait till the fucker retires. He's 40. Like when he debuted, it was
get him out of here.
It was literally the 4-year anniversary of 9/11 when Adam Wainwright debuted. That's how long ago this dude debuted. He debuted 17 years ago. Like, get him the fuck out of the league and the fuck out of the NL Central, for the love of God, because he does nothing but kill the Cubs, and he did it again tonight with 7 shutout innings, because that's just the stupid shit that happens. And at least, hey, we got a web gem from Ian Happ. Nice job robbing a home run. And we got a web gem, not a web gem, but we got a highlight from Willie hitting a triple earlier in the evening. So that was cool and tough, because they're still here, and we'll get to that in just a second. But Joey, you had some interesting thoughts on Keegan, and you had some interesting numbers to share, because he looked rough tonight. Just looked like he wasn't comfortable at any point. They noted on the broadcast at one point, I think he only had like 2 swings and misses at one point. Very uncharacteristic of Keegan Thompson so far this year. So, sir, I'll turn the floor over to you here to share some data with us, because hashtag analytics are cool and tough.
Yeah, man. Coming into this game, his strikeout rate, his WOBA, and his ERA were way different and worse on the road. His home road splits were a lot different. Now, his ERA was like 2 full points higher. His strikeout rate was like 6 percentage points lower on the road than compared to at home. And then the WOBA was just dramatically different too, like under 300 at home compared down the road. It's like closer to 350. But he, a lot of that could be that's baked in where he had those back-to-back rough outings in Baltimore and then in New York against the Yankees. So I don't want to like put a ton of that on Keegan as far as like, is he a guy that just struggles on the road? I'm not necessarily saying that, but it is something that I'm kind of watching for because he hasn't made, I think he's only made like 2 road starts since June 22nd or something like that. Like he's missed some road action. I could be off on that number, but I know he pitched pretty well in LA against the Dodgers on the road. He had a pretty solid outing there. And I want to say that the other outing, he didn't go more than 4 or something. I don't think he had like a ton of damage, but he might not have went more than 4 in that outing. Yeah. But nonetheless, and I think that was like the one that was like June 22nd or whatever. But, tonight it's like he's been pitching in some tough spots, right? Like you have that big emotional game at Wrigley where we're going to get to it, but everybody thinks that Wilson Contreras and he and Happ are on their way out the door. For sure, Wilson Contreras. Other guys on the roster, David Robertson, et cetera, et cetera. And Keegan Thompson went out there and shoved against the Pittsburgh Pirates. And I have a draft save that, I'm going to get this article out eventually, but I'm still like kind of working on it, as like the season goes. And putting together a lot of different pieces here with Keegan. And I want to see more. I don't want to release it just yet after this outing because I want to kind of collect some even more data on him, I guess. And that's kind of what this whole season's kind of about as far as like a developmental standpoint, right? So I do want to see a little bit more from Keegan before I really put this thing out there. But also, like with catchers too, right? Like this is something that I'm kind of going to speak negatively about Wilson Contreras before we dive into the like meat and potatoes here. But, me and Juice had kind of talked about this in the past too, where he's not the best. We all have, where he's not the best pitch framer. He's not the best game caller. And I think that's something where the Cubs were looking at as far as not just getting Willie off of his feet and getting the leg some rest and getting the bat more productive at the plate, but also they wanted somebody that can really legit handle a pitching staff. And I think there's, talks out there about Kyle Hendricks liking to work with Yan Gomes. The numbers are a lot different when he pitches to Yan Gomes compared to Wilson. I looked up Keegan Thompson's numbers. They're way different pitching to Yan Gomes than they are Wilson Contreras. They're far better coming into tonight.
Justin Steele, definitely tonight an outlier a little bit there.
It's bad. It's bad after tonight. But I don't think it catches Willie, though. It might not catch Willie. And then Justin Steele as well. Justin Steele pitching to Yan Gomes better. ERA-wise than pitching to Wilson Contreras, and I'm just kind of looking at this, and I want to say Stroman was like really close. It wasn't like a dramatic difference one way or the other. I think he might actually have a little bit better numbers with Wilson, but it was not a dramatic difference compared to the other 3 that I mentioned. And those are 4 guys that you're looking at next year as like those are starting rotation pieces, right? Like barring health with Kyle Hendricks. You could move like Steele or Thompson back to the pen or something, but like what we've seen from them in the rotation, who wants to do that, right? So,
right.
I don't know. It's just some things that I'm looking for. And I know this game, like it didn't mean anything and it doesn't prove my point here. I'm just giving stats. I'm not proving a point, but it's just something I'm watching for as we move forward. Like who he's pitching to, Keegan, Justin Steele, Stroman, these guys who they're pitching to, how it comes together, and then like the home and road splits, just to see if that's kind of a thing. I don't know if it's a thing, but just to see if it is.
Yeah, and so far, Keegan, as you mentioned, numbers very different on the road. A lot of that is based kind of on these 3 starts now, right? Like that Yankees start, that Baltimore start, and now this Cardinals start will be up there as well after a tough night. But even with the 5 earned runs, Joe, I mean, still a 3.48 ERA on the season, still a very respectable number from Keegan Thompson. Certainly still having a great year, but obviously tonight an outlier, just a really shitty game. So, I mean, there's really not a lot to talk about, unfortunately, with this game. The biggest probably bright spot offensively, Yan Gomes had 2 hits tonight. Outside of that, a couple of guys with 1 hit. Obviously, we mentioned the Wilson Contreras triple. That was probably the biggest.
That's cool.
Yeah, that was probably the biggest real hit of the night. But outside of that, just a very meh kind of game, and it really felt that way. I think a lot of what today was kind of attributes to that. And I think that's a perfect transitioning point. We will preview tomorrow's game at the end of the episode. So for those that are listening along and curious when that's coming, bear with us. It'll be here soon. But obviously, we need to address the elephant in the room. And this is the last time, I think, for the season, we really need to address it. Obviously, I'm sure this will come up in conversation at points during the year, probably here and there. But overall, the last major conversation we can have about the trade deadline. Like this, it's finally come and gone. Cubs made a couple of moves today, maybe not the ones that we all expected. I even got called out by my lovely mother, who's an avid listener. She's like, none of you picked them to not leave. And we were like, yeah, you're right. We did it. Like, you got us.
We failed.
Got us. I mean, cool things, though, like our friend Alop says here in the comments, Hader and Bader are gone. Like that's cool and tough. Love to see that. Get them the fuck out of the division. So certainly happy about that. And as you said earlier, hello, Jets. William Happ are staying, and they are. And we're going to talk about that here in just a second. But Joey, let's talk about what the Cubs actually did do today before what they didn't do today. And what they did do today was trade a pair of relievers, kind of what we expected. Probably the most guaranteed names to be traded entering really even the season, I would argue. We all kind of looked at this, and when these guys started pitching at the back end of the bullpen, we're like, yeah, if they pitch well, they're gone at the deadline. And that was Michael Givens and David Robertson. Both of them traded today. Both traded to the NL East, ironically, today as well. Givens goes to the Mets really close to the deadline, ultimately for right-handed pitcher Saul Gonzalez, a relief pitcher in the minors, and Joe, you wrote up that article earlier today. I think you wrote up the other one actually too for David Robertson being traded as well. And he, on the other hand, was traded for big right-handed pitcher Ben Brown. And we'll get to Ben Brown in just a second. But Joey, just quickly touching on Saul Gonzalez, not a top 30 prospect for the Mets, or at least I didn't see him there. He's certainly not going to be top 30 for the Cubs. But some decent numbers so far this season. Again, a guy that was a 23rd round pick in 2018. And I'm pulling these numbers, folks, from Joey's article over at ontapsportsnet.com. Highly encourage you to go over there and read it as well. But 14 games for him. He was at low A, which is St. Lucie for the Mets. 281 ERA, 29 strikeouts, only 7 walks, and 25 2/3 innings pitched. Nice numbers, right? Very respectable. I'm happy about those numbers. Obviously, he's still at low A as a 22-year-old. So realistically, he's probably a couple years away if he is going to get to the majors. Maybe, at least 2. I would say you probably want to at least see him through AA before he even gets a look at the major league level. But Joey, do you have any thoughts on the Saul Gonzalez trade? And maybe any thoughts just on the Givens trade in general? Do you wish they got more? Do you think they got the right value? What have you? I will turn the floor over to you here, my friend.
For the Givens trade, it's interesting, like in the sense that, like you mentioned it. I mean, he's a relief pitcher mostly. Like that's what he's been doing at St. Lucie. Lower levels, obviously the Mets system. He hasn't pitched too many innings, but good numbers, like very respectable numbers, as you said. And it's they've been targeting these high, I don't want to call them like high powered arms. That's basically what Jed was saying too, in his presser or, afterwards after the deadline. And I think it's obviously solid. Like we talked about them building up this bullpen, building it back up along with like when you trade a guy that's got, I don't know how many years I wrote in that article for Michael Givens, years of experience. He's in his 30s. Same with David Robertson, upper 30s. You had him on 1-year contracts, right? There's nothing really hurts about this move when you can get a guy that potentially has control for a while once he gets up here. And maybe you turn him into, you just keep churning it out, right? You use him for a couple of years in your competing window. Will we ever see him at the major league level? I don't fucking know. Like he's, a 23rd round pick and, has some potential, but that's one guy that I do want to look a little bit further into that I didn't really have a chance to even really watch that much or pay close attention. I might've seen him on some of the minor league games and really it wasn't like, oh, it's just a guy out of the bullpen. You know what I mean? Like not really watching as close, watching more like Cubs hitters and stuff, but I don't know. I guess, we can talk a little bit more about the Robertson return because I feel pretty damn good about the Robertson return, honestly. And you mentioned the big 6'6", Ben Brown. He's he really seems like he's rising on a lot of people's ranks, their lists. I think he wasn't somebody who was on my radar. I might have even tweeted that out. He wasn't somebody who I was looking at as like, man, maybe the Cubs should target this guy. You know what I mean? Like there are those guys where, and admittedly, there's always going to be somebody who's not on my radar, like Saul Gonzalez, right? Like better call Saul, as Brandon McCain said in our Slack channel. So, but yeah, man, I really like. He's got the power fastball. You know, he's got the curve, got the slider, putting up really good numbers. I think injuries has really held him back at the minors, and he was just called up. You know, Double-A. He didn't pitch in Double-A yet before this trade, but he's a guy that, you know, he's been in their system for a little while, right? Like if he wasn't held back by injuries, I think he would have been on the move. And, you know, one of the guys who I think he is a Phillies fan, we follow each other on Twitter, and he's, you know, a prospect guy. He follows these prospects. He plays, you know, a lot of fantasy baseball, somebody I respect their opinion a lot. And I wish I could shout out his name right now, but I forget what his handle is. But, you know, he told me, he's like, yeah, if not for the injuries, this guy would have been up there and moved up the ranks a lot faster. And he really had a coming out party this season. So I'm excited, man. I'm excited to see what he hasn't thrown that many innings. He didn't even, this is like maybe his career high in innings. I'm not quite sure, but he has not thrown that many innings at the minors because of the injuries. So they saw something they liked, and I'm eager to go back in and kind of watch, you know, the film on him too.
Yeah, and we'll add there as well. I really don't have much to add on Saul. Obviously, like you said, I really don't know much about him. Numbers look enticing. Hey, if he comes up and he's a relief pitcher for the Cubs at some point, cool. And like you said, I mean, we may never see him. Who knows? You're getting something. You're betting on the upside. There's clearly something there that the Cubs like. Obviously, with the pitch lab, they love bringing guys in that they see something that they can develop, right? So clearly, you know, as you said, better call Saul. He's got something there that the Cubs like. But agreed, I think Ben Brown's certainly the more interesting prospect because was ranked number 26 in the Phillies system pretty much at the start of the season. They hadn't really re-ranked him yet for his success this year so far. He's slotting in at number 11 for the Cubs right now, and that's pretty high given the amount of talent. Yeah, pretty high given the amount of talent that is in this Cubs prospect pool. But just some numbers and figures on Ben Brown here for those listening. He's only 22. He's still very young. Ironically, he's born on 9/9/1999. I think that's kind of funny. That's your fun fact of the day for everybody. But he's 6'6", 210. He's a big son of a bitch. A right-handed power arm. He was a 33rd round pick in 2017. And you mentioned, right, the injuries and things like that. Yes, it is a career high for him in innings this year. The best year he had prior to this was in 2018. He split some time with short season A ball when that was still around at the time in rookie ball. He pitched 56 and 2/3 innings that year. This year, he's already up to 73 innings of work at high A ball. For the Phils, and you mentioned the promotion. He was with Double-A Reading before coming over to the Cubs. Would probably imagine that he's going to report to Tennessee. I can't imagine he's going to go down to South Bend. I think they're going to leave him there and let him show his stuff off. But again, like you said, Joey, a guy that I think is fair to be excited about. His numbers this year, he has a 3.08 ERA, 15 starts, 16 total appearances. He's only given up 7 home runs. He's K'd 105 and only walked 23. So, I mean, those are cool numbers, right? Those are cool.
Absolutely.
And he also has a 60 grade fastball. I think that's worth mentioning because, ironically, they got him same draft as they got Logan O'Hop, who was, I think he's the number 3 prospect in the Phil system. But this year, he's having a good year. He pumps 94, 96 consistently on that fastball, tops out at 98 and features arm side run according to MLB Pipeline. So again, a guy that you bring in these, like you said, right, these power arms that the Cubs want to bring in and tinker with and develop them into something. Worst case scenario, he's an elite relief pitcher. Best case scenario, he's a starter. Who the fuck knows, right? Like there's so many opportunities for the Cubs, right? I mean, Jordan Wicks had a good night tonight. If we're just bringing up things, he went 5 innings, K'd 8. Like that's cool and tough. Nice. Think scoreless too. I don't think he gave up any runs. So, the Cubs are stockpiling arms. We saw it in the draft. What did they drafted? What 16 fucking
almost
pitchers
everybody,
in 20 rounds? Yeah, they drafted 4 position players, and 3 of the 4 went in like the last 5 rounds of the draft. Christopher Paciello was the only player they picked before round like 15 that was a position player, and he's a shortstop. So like that just goes to show they are trying to stockpile arms, because guess what? It's the numbers. It's the it's the law of averages. You got enough guys in there. Some of them are bound to pan out. And worst case scenario, you can trade from this stable of arms that you're developing, because every team in the league needs arms. It's just the nature of the beast. So again, you're seeing the model that Jed and Carter Hawkins and Dan Cantrivitz and company want to build. That's cool. I'd like that. But, again, they got a really high leverage young prospect that looks intriguing for not a shot at David Robertson, but like this guy's coming off of severe surgery that kept him out for a couple of years. He kind of showed some promise late last season with the Rays.
Right.
They bring him in, and he was elite. He was electric early in the season. You could have argued he could have been an all-star. So I think that's certainly a great return for a guy that was essentially like almost I don't want to call him a project, but a 1-year rental project was more or less what Robertson was. So
I mean, dude, he missed almost 2 full seasons. Like basically,
facts are facts. Yeah, facts are facts. And he's up there in age, right? It would have been way different if he was 24 and blew out his arm versus 35, 34 and blowing out his arm.
And that's why I think David Robertson, like, he's one of the guys that can talk to, like, when you send him somewhere, like, let's say you got a free agent that's like considering, I'm not quite sure where to go. I mean, of course, he's uniting with Kyle Schwarber over there in Philly, right? And Schwarber knows like what the Cubs are all about. He knows the organization really well, obviously, and probably feels like they did him a little bit dirty with the non-tendering, but Dave Robertson can go in there and talk to guys like, hey, they gave me a shot. They gave me an opportunity. They treated me well, and then they let me go play for somebody who's competing, somebody who's trying to contend, which the Phillies are still trying to do.
Trying is a good word for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they're, quite going to make it, but hey, I mean, Robertson seemed like he was very grateful for the opportunity, and I love what you're saying, man, about these arms. Like, I almost had my name on the live stream here, arms on top of arms, because they really are, man. They're just stockpiling arms, and Jed mentioned it. Like, they're going for these high upside arms, and they're looking for the high powered arms, something that they haven't had in the system, which everybody has talk shit about, right? Everybody in the national media, they can't develop pitching. They haven't had enough pitching prospects. They haven't, that's what had them stall out, during this during this golden era of Cubs baseball. Well, if it's going to change, it's going to change because you got a plethora, so many different options to work with now that there's almost no way that some of these guys are not going to hit. And you're seeing where they're popping up in the system as far as like just the pipeline ranks, and even on Fangraphs. Like, Fangraphs get them a lot of respect too, or some of these other lists. Like, it's cool to see, because for the longest time you had like Braylon Marquez up there near the top, who if this was updated, let's be honest, he'd be down, falling off the top 25 now after, the debridement surgery and all that. Like, he wouldn't even be up there, I don't think. But and it's a shame because he's such a high powered arm, but he's probably looking at a career in the bullpen if he even ever comes back and pans out. But that's the thing. Then like, what if that does happen, right? That's another testament to they built up his velocity. Like, he wasn't that hard throwing when he came into the system. They made him that hard throwing. Maybe it affected his arm and got him hurt, maybe, but nonetheless, like, they know how to develop these arms, and now they're looking at guys that already throw that hard, and then they can develop their secondary offerings, because they can work with the sliders, they can work with the sinkers, start developing. Like, look at Keegan Thompson with that slider. He hasn't quite perfected the slider and thrown it that much at the big league level, but it's a nasty weapon. Like, the movement on it is ridiculous. He just doesn't throw it that often, but So I'm intrigued. I don't know. I'm rambling a lot. I know we said we were going to keep this show short. We haven't even touched on Willie and Hap yet, but I'm very like, you know how I get when I start talking about some of these things because it gets me excited.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's nothing wrong with being excited because, again, like you said, I think you nailed it perfectly, Joey. It's they're stockpiling so many arms that a handful of them are bound to hit. Like it's bound to happen, right? Like you can't bring in just in trades and everything alone at this deadline. You brought in what 3 arms via trade, and then you had the 16 in the draft, and I think they signed 15 of the 16 because they signed 19 of 20 overall. You just brought 18 arms into the system on top of what you already had. So I certainly agree with you there. It's okay to be excited because they are stockpiling, high leverage arms that are worth mentioning. So Ben Brown certainly going to be an interesting name to keep an eye on. Obviously, the earlier trades here in the deadline, you acquire one pitcher who's closer to the major leagues, right? And then you get a guy like Brown, who's they say his ETA is 2024, and that probably makes sense given the injuries and such. You probably don't see him for all of next year, and then maybe the year after you'll see him in the big league. So certainly something to keep an eye on there. But like you said, we haven't even gotten to the fact that Ian Happ and Willson Contreras are still Chicago Cubs as of today. Everybody was holding their breath, refreshing Twitter like a bunch of psychopaths all day long, and ultimately for nothing to happen, right? At kind of the last minute, the trade report or the reports came out. The Cubs are not trading Willson Contreras and Ian Happ, and there's some people, David Kaplan being an example, who are pissed. Don't understand why.
But he loved Contreras.
Correction, I understand why he's upset. But
no extension, right?
He's like, no, just from the standpoint of like, if you're not going to keep him, you got to trade him, blah, 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 whatever. But like, very just pissed, right? Just very irritated, whatever. But I think there's also a large part of the fan base that's happy. But it's a happiness with like, but this, right? Like it's not full blown, like rejoice, let's be happy, right? No, now it's like, all right, cool, you're keeping them. Now, either you do one of two things with Willson Contreras. It's either you fucking extend him or you just let him walk for nothing. Well, a draft pick, whoop-de-fucking-d. In baseball, I don't get excited about draft picks, sorry. And then with Hap, it's okay, you have another year with Hap for sure. Are you extending him or are you trading him next year, right? Like, so there's all these kind of still what ifs that play around here. And I think that's why a lot of people, like you said, like nobody's really upset that they're still here for the most part. But nobody's overly rejoicing either because it's like, cool, they're still here now, do this. What say you on the Ian Happ and Willson Contreras situations today, Joey?
Nah, man, I think you kind of put it together very nicely there because I think that's kind of been the theme all season, right? It's been this very decisive or divisive, I should say, like divided fan base. I think there's people that are like fully on board and 100% all in on the rebuild, which I'm kind of more towards that side than anything because I had to be. Like, I feel like when you yank those 3 guys away from the team and then you get those prospects back, the return you got, you kind of better fucking get in that lane. Otherwise, like, what are you doing? You're yelling at fucking clouds. And I'm not going to yell at clouds.
Yeah, old man yells at cloud.
I'm not doing it because then I just stress myself out. So these people get mad all day long, every day. They go on social media, they bitch, they yell at the clouds, and I can't do it. Sorry. Like Tom's not listening to me. Tom Ricketts isn't listening to me. Jed Hoyer's not listening to me. I mean, maybe they are a little bit. They listen to the fans a little bit. There is a little bit where they listen and go, you know what? The criticism is fair, and these people want to cut off my head. And I feel like they're hearing the criticism, and they know what they need to do, and Jed wants to put together a winner. So I don't put as much of this on Jed as you could put it on Tom Ricketts for a lot of the things, too, that happened even during Theo's time here, right?
Yeah.
But now back to today, because that was just kind of to set this whole thing up where everybody just assumed that Wilson Contreras was getting traded. We all did. We did it. Me, you, Juice, Tyler, everybody at On Tap, at Cubs On Tap here, and everybody on social media, everybody, even Marquee Network was doing it, right? With the games, like they were basically showing the games as if it was Wilson Contreras' swan song, or Ian Happ could be traded, or you know what I mean? They were like almost promoting it. Now, one, that's kind of fucked up if you weren't trading the guy, but because who owns Marquee, right? The Cubs. So it's kind of fucked up. But two, what draws in viewership? What draws in ratings? If you are the Cubs, now if you have your views have been down, you're not getting as many subscriptions, people buying into Marquee Network, they're pissed because you sold off all these players. Oh, I want to watch Wilson Contreras' final games here. You know what I mean? I want to watch Wilson Contreras' final games as a Chicago Cub or Ian Happ or whatever. And Jake says here, yeah, Marquee buying into the narrative of the trades made it even more fucked up. I agree. I think that was kind of maybe a way to make some money, right? Maybe kind of, but at the same time, I do think that Jed was listening to offers. And that's where I want to go next. I do think Jed was listening to the offers and was legitimately, he probably would have traded Wilson and traded Happ if the right deals. And he basically was saying it. He wasn't getting good deals. And a large part of that, to me, it was always weighing on the Juan Soto domino. And he basically was saying the same thing. If Juan Soto goes to whoever he goes to, he ended up going to the Padres, which the Padres were in on Wilson Contreras. He's one of the teams that Willie could have went to, either the Padres or he could have went to the Rays or he could have went the Mets. You know what I mean? Like those three teams, I was kind of, once the Astros got Vasquez, I mean, the Rays got, was it Bethancourt, I think? Like that's not a huge move for catcher. Like I still thought that they lost Zunino for the year. Mejia's down.
That being said, though, that's very on par for the Rays, though, to go get some no-name dude that we've never heard of before. So,
absolutely,
mind you,
that's just what they do, right? And they turn him into like a solid player for somehow. Like,
yeah, and then
they're really good.
They just keep building talent because they have a payroll that's a third of every other team in the league, and somehow
they win somehow. Yeah, or they don't win World Series, but like they get close. You know what I mean? Like they're a competitive team. They're a good, well-ran organization. They just don't have a ton of money. That's basically what it is. But the Cubs do have that money. So if they start acting like a well-run organization, which I think that they kind of are now, and I mean, it's tough because on one side of the fence, I do think that they should have traded Contreras after all the way that this all played out, right? And just everybody assuming, and he's doing the hugs and, like Willie Swan song, like it. But on the other side, it's like you don't give this guy away for nothing. And that's basically the way that he put it too. Like they weren't giving us the prospects that, and some people will tell you, well, they should have sold him earlier. A lot of teams didn't know if they were buying or selling yet. And then some teams became more available later on that weren't available earlier as far as needing a catcher, right? Like, right. So I think, was Jed like overestimating the market for a catcher at this point, or even Ian Happ at this point? Maybe it's entirely possible. And I think there is some degree to that. But like, I also think that you're in a good position where you can just extend him because Willie wants to be here. I don't think that the relationship is that tarnished even after all this, because look how happy he was running out onto the field. I mean, yes, you can offer him the qualifying offer, whatever, but like even a 3-year contract or something like that, like, will he accept it? I don't know. Will he? But like it's out there now. Like he is a team leader still, even though I talked that shit at the beginning about him not working, the numbers being really different with Keegan and Steele and Hendricks compared to Yan Gomes. Still one of the best hitting catchers on the team. He's still the heart and soul of this team. So
right.
I know I'm getting a little long-winded here, Ron, but like I don't hate it, even though like at first I'm like, just what the fuck are we doing here? But it's like it's Wilson Contreras. I always want him to be a Cub. I didn't want him to leave. It was just I just thought that that's what like the writing was on the wall.
Yeah, and a lot of good comments here, Joey. I love when you ramble because when you ramble, we get good comments. So, sometimes it's okay here, and I'm gonna putz around to a couple of these too because I think it's so. So you said right, like the move probably should have been, and Tony the Blind One here on YouTube says the smart business plan was to deal Wilson, and I think it was right. Just you go by the law of averages with baseball. It's what he also says. What's up, boys? Finally get a chance to watch us live. Hey, thanks for joining. We're glad to get to catch us live. But there's a lot of things to keep in mind with that, right? Like you said, I think, and to bring the Jed press conference into this a little bit, right? I think based on his words, because Jed, yes, of course, Jed was vague, and of course, Jed wasn't going to tip his hand to the reporters of what he was actually thinking. Let's be honest. We're never going to know the exact conversations that were had. But the way he phrased it was they did not see the value that was being presented to them to end Willie's tenure like this. To me, that screams a couple of different avenues. One, that the offers just weren't up to par with what they wanted. I think that was the case for both him and Hap. And I think they were asking for a lot because they do see the value in keeping these guys as well. That being said, little tinfoil hat take here. He also says they don't want to end his tenure going out at the deadline. That doesn't scream to me that they're going to extend him either.
It doesn't. We're not sure, right? We're not.
Right. There's still there is still a fuck ton of what if, especially with Wilson Contreras. I think with Ian Happ, it's a little different. Obviously, we're probably going to play this stupid fucking game again next year. Let's just be totally honest right now.
It would be dumb not to at least offer the qualifying offer, though. I think we can both
agree. No, and they will. They will. They've. I think that's already been kind of confirmed by like the media. Is like, they can offer the qualifying offer even if he doesn't take it. He signs elsewhere. They still get, again, the draft pick, which I truthfully don't give a fuck about, but whatever.
But Ron, I don't want to intervene on your thought, and please don't lose your thought. The draft pick to me, it could be better than whatever the Mets were offering, for example, though, right? Because Vientos can't play defense. He's got a high upside bat, but like Matt Allen's had injuries, right? Like it hasn't even pitched this year, I don't believe. So like they're hoping to get him back at the end of the year or whatever. I don't know, but like whatever they were offering for Wilson, like maybe that draft pick is better with the scouting department. And I mean, go ahead with your point though. Like,
let me pop in here and talk you down really quick because I agree, right? There is this excitement of what it could be, right? Like what this player could be because it's not something you already know. I'm going to use an example that our good friend Johnny Nani used on our Four Feathers podcast. For any of you that are big Blackhawks fans, please go ahead and check us out over there. It's the one time I actually share a microphone with guys that are White Sox fans. But we did the show talking about the Alex DeBrincat trade rumors, and everybody in Chicago knows all about how that ended up playing out. And he used a very fun example, and the example was Family Guy, right? Because everybody remembers when Peter Griffin gets offered the boat or the mystery box. You can have the fucking boat. You know what the boat is. But no, you want the mystery box. And the mystery box, sure, the mystery box could be a boat, right? It could be another guy that's another Wilson Contreras, right? But it also could be a dud and a piece of shit that you never get anything out of.
Right.
You could have just taken the boat in the fucking first place. So that's my problem, right? Because I think so much, yes, you do need to draft well. Yes, you still need draft capital in order to bring players into your system. That is still incredibly important. But at the same time, the human nature loses their mind over potential and what it could be. Ooh, I don't fucking care. I want to know what it is. And that's and fair. If you know what you're being offered because you've seen these prospects and you've done your due diligence on them, then that's great. I think it comes at the right move then if that's the case. Don't just trade them for fucking the mystery box, right? Don't just do that. Keep them here. But I think there's a lot more uncertainty with Wilson now going forward. I think they absolutely could extend him. I think there's value in that. They talked about it on the broadcast. David Ross has said, and Hoyer said it in his press conference. He's like, yeah, David Ross and I have had this conversation that veterans have value in, a rebuild and then ultimately teaching these guys how to win. Right. Teaching these guys how to win. Wilson has a World Series ring. Ian Happ was here for a lot of those good runs as a player and has had a very up and down career and has battled adversity. That's a good lesson to bring to a young team. I think there's the value there. And I think that's just what it's so interesting because, yeah, they're still here, but like the dark hanging cloud's still going to be there the rest of the season, at least with Willie, maybe a little less with Hap, but it'll still be there with Willie. And I thank you again, Tony, for jumping in here in the comments, friend. But he says next season the draft class is going to be significantly better from what we hear. That's fine, but like
I hear what you're saying, though, Ron. I hear what you're saying.
Just really quick. When we're comparing the four major sports, baseball is the biggest crapshoot.
It is. 100%.
Look at, for example, the perfect example I use. Jackie Bradley Jr. was a first-round pick for the Boston Red Sox. In the same draft, in the 5th round, they got Mookie Betts. There's a lot of what-ifs in baseball, and the draft is by far one of them. I can promise you right now, law of averages of the 20 guys they just drafted, we'll be lucky if we see 5 of them make the major leagues.
Anthony Rizzo wasn't a top pick.
Right. And Brett Jackson was. Everybody remembers Brett Jackson.
You know the guy that everyone's freaking out about, Matt Mervis? He's a 6th round. Well, it would have been a 6th round
technically,
pick.
Yeah, technically undrafted.
Yeah, right. I keep saying 6th round pick because everyone says, well, he would have been selected.
He might as well have been their 6th round pick if there was a 6th round in that draft.
But I hear what you're saying, Ron, and I completely agree with you. Take what you know. And I think Ben Brown, 33rd rounder. Thank you, Jake Bouge. I'm so glad that he's in the comments too. Yeah, that's spot on, man. Like he's a 33rd rounder that like just ascended, right? He just ascended and he just kept growing and he kept blossoming into this potential that the reason why he was selected, no matter where he was selected, was because somebody saw something in him. And now he's like, but like you don't see that in the NBA. 2nd round picks. How often was a 2nd round pick or undrafted free agent? Like Fred VanVleet, undrafted, becomes a stud. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't happen that often, though. Like
Sunmu being a 2nd round pick was a revelation. Was truly a revelation.
But even he's not going to be like an MVP. You know what I mean? Like you can legit get an MVP. I mean, I guess you don't
mystery
know.
Mystery box, Joey. You never know.
Yeah, it's the mystery box, dude. That's why I do agree with you. We know what we're getting with Wilson Contreras. And that's kind of on the same level of like where my point was about these prospects with Matt Allen, who's coming back from an injury, and Vientos, who's we don't know if he could play defense, right? It's kind of a mystery box if you trade him for those guys. Say those were the offers. I don't know what the offers were. We have no idea. We're not Jed Hoyer. But like if those are the offers, and I'm still very interested in Vientos' bat. I've went on and said that. Like if you're trading Wisdom for Vientos, fine, let's do it. But like I do agree with you that like sometimes it's just not the juice is not worth the squeeze. And since Juice is not here on this podcast, isn't that from The Girl Next Door? What's that movie? I'm pretty sure it's The Girl Next Door. Anyways, Ron, you got to go back and watch that. Yeah, man. Like I just say
running tally here. Ron is the worst at watching movies. So
you do know your sports movies though, Moneyball and stuff. Like you know some movies. You're definitely in your name here too. They ain't fucking leaving. You know that movie too. Good movie. Great movie. Anyways, I guess back to my point. Like I do think that like Wilson Contreras. And if you're not watching what some of these prospects, it's Girl Next Door. Tony the Blind says in the comments, I love it.
Coming through in the clutch.
Yeah. The juice is worth the squeeze. But this case, maybe not. Like, I do think that a lot of the hitting catchers that are coming up as prospects right now, or a lot of the catchers are good hitting catchers. You got Alejandro Kirk, Gabriel Moreno. I think he's going to be a good hitting catcher. Like, you have MJ Melendez. You have Adley Rutschman. You have Dalton Varsho, who can play a little outfield too. Like, there are some better hitting catchers coming up, and it's not necessarily just defensive-minded catchers. So that's where it's like, if you can give them some off days, play DH, have your better game caller for your certain pitchers, right? Mm-hmm. Especially the ones that might need that defensive-minded catcher, like need a Yan Gomes. You put him with that pitcher. Because, like, Max Scherzer, he loves Thomas Nido, for example, right? Same with Taijuan Walker. They love pitching to Thomas Nido. They'll sacrifice that bat if they can get that great defensive first catcher.
If Max Scherzer's shit pumping 15 Ks every time.
Do you care? Like, I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
We only need 2 runs today. That's fine.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, man, it was just like, it was a surprise with Willie. With Hap, it wasn't really a surprise. He kind of came on late that it was like, shit, they could trade Hap too. High value, maximum value this year. All-star, first time all-star, right? Like, switch hitter. He's young. He's got an extra year of control. You could get maximum value for him. With Willie, it was like, it's going to happen, and then it didn't happen. But now that it didn't happen, I can't say I'm mad because we'll see what they do in free agency. If you are building, he said from day one, Wilson Contreras has said, I'm okay with them. Basically, I'm okay with them building around me. If they want to build around me, build around me. I want to be in Chicago. And you cannot help, if you're a Cubs fan and you're passionate about this team, you cannot help but fucking love that. And I love that.
Yeah, and I'm going to add something really quick to this too, and I think this might be a good point to round out on is the love for Wilson Contreras and just the professional that he is. Our boy Jake Bouge dropped some quotes in here from I'm assuming it's the post game with Wilson Contreras, and he says, quote, "They did what they're supposed to do, to listen to offers. Like I've said before, this is business. It's not about feelings. It's about business. And I don't have any hard feelings." And that's what Contreras said, and he followed that up with the dude is incredible. And he's a pro's pro, and I think that's I think you truly saw, though, in the month of July, the rumors way down on him. You saw it in his offensive performance. It really went downhill in the month of July, probably his worst month of the season. I want to see that kind of, that uptick again here in August, I think, with Willie. And I think we are going to see that at least for the rest of the season. There's a lot of interesting shit that still needs to happen. It's like this is kind of that first, hurdle of the, Wilson Contreras and Ian Happ saga. Because with Willie, do they sign him in the offseason or not? And with Happ, it's, are you sellers at the deadline again next year, or are you buyers at the deadline again next year? And obviously 2023 is a whole nother, bag of tricks that we'll get into when the time comes, but a lot of open-ended questions. I think that's why today was weird. And you said it as well, Joey. Open-ended questions that we still need answered. So very interesting day, a crazy deadline ultimately, even though the Cubs really didn't do a ton, truthfully. So, it is what it is at the end of the day.
Ron, I just find it interesting, though, since we're just on the topic, I find it really interesting that there are so many people that I'm not trying to direct this towards anyone in particular. I don't take it as that, anyone listening or whatever, but there's so many people that they're one side of the fence or the other. And then when it doesn't happen, what they didn't want to happen, they try to rub it in other people's face, right? Maybe somebody thought that he was going to get traded or they wanted him to get traded because of whatever, team construction, whatever. And then the people that didn't want him to get traded are like, the Cubs are dumb for not trading him or whatever. You know what I mean? Whatever the case is. And it's you can't have it both ways. Either be in between, yes, but what's with the outrage? I really don't understand it. I don't think there's anything to get too overly upset about at this point. Nothing bad has happened necessarily. People are calling this a colossal failure that they didn't trade him. And from day one, even Contreras said, they never told me that they were trading me. People asked him, if you talk to Jed Hoyer, has he said that you're getting traded or whatever? No, no, I haven't talked to anybody. So it's it's not really necessarily they're disrespecting him so much. And Bouge put in the comments there, he knows it's a business. Mm-hmm. He loves the fans here. He loves Chicago. He's been here his entire career in this organization. It's why not? Necessarily, is he going to be brought back? We don't know. But I don't know. I'm going to enjoy these last 2 months and ride it out. What's the worst that can happen? You lost out on a prospect when the farm system is already stacked here. This is the type of shit that people are mad about, right? Them trading all these guys. Mm-hmm. So you let Contreras ride it out. What is the worst that can happen? You sign a catcher. I understand that it's hard to find catchers and all that, but especially good hitting catchers now. But there's a lot worse things that could happen. You put your eggs in a different basket as far as top dollars go in free agency, and hey, let's keep rolling. It's not the worst thing in the world.
Yeah, I agree, and very well put by you, sir. It'll be interesting. We'll have to just wait and see what happens, but we'll enjoy it for the rest of the season. Willie's still a Cub, and I'll actually get to see him this Sunday, still in person, and I'm very excited about that. And Joey, let's take a look forward because still 2 more games with the Cardinals, still in shitbag St. Louis. Just quickly though, I want to drop this: a 6-game homestand coming up for the Cubs starting this weekend. If you're looking to go to the ballpark, like this is the weekend to do it. And here's why, just really quick. Friday is neon tank top giveaway in the Budweiser bleachers. You got to love that. Saturday's Nick Madrigal bobblehead for the Nick Madrigal truthers. I do not care for that bobblehead personally, but neither here nor there. And then Sunday's Hawaiian shirt day, which is kind of dope. So that should be kind of fun. And then there's a Cubs beach bag giveaway on Tuesday next week against the Nationals. So a lot of good giveaways. It's August. Like, it's a nice time of the year. Get out to the ballpark. And Willie and Hap are still here. So why wouldn't you want to go see those guys still play, for your Chicago Cubs? But we'll reel it back in a little bit because tomorrow on Wednesday, August 3rd, Cubs and Cardinals do battle again at 6:45 local time here in the Chicagoland area at Busch Stadium in St. Louis, Missouri. If you want to listen to this game, 670 The Score in Chicago. I'm not going to list it all off, but 11:20 a.m., 98.7 FM if you are down in the Cardinals area. And then Valley Sports Midwest for the Cardinals broadcast, Marquee Sports Network. For the Cubs broadcast, it's left-hander Justin Steele on the bump, friend of the program. He's 4-7 on the year with a 3.86 ERA. And then on the other side, it is Miles Mikolas. The right-hander is 8-8 on the season with a 2.86 ERA, having a really nice year for the Cardinals. So this will be a good matchup. Just really quick, Joey, your thoughts on tomorrow, what the Cubs need to do to hopefully get a win, because Lord knows I don't want to talk about another loss, and then we'll wrap this thing up here.
Yeah, for a while I was kind of feeling like they had some decent success against Miles Michaelis. I always say his name differently. I don't know.
Potato.
Yeah, depends on the day with me.
He's a Cardinal. He's a Cardinal. I don't care.
Yeah, I don't give a fuck. I really don't, Ron. But he's been better this year, right? Like, he's been much better for the most part, especially like the first couple months of the season. He was pretty damn good. And I mean, just get to him. It's kind of like every game, right? I think today was get to him early, obviously. I think today was a little bit weird. And even from Keegan Thompson's standpoint, where you had Hap and Contreras in the lineup, but there was always that kind of like looming, who's going to be gone? We feel like Contreras is going to be gone. We feel like Hap's going to be gone. Don't know about Wisdom. Don't know about Ortega. Like, I think there was a lot of that looming today. I could be 100% wrong on that side of things. Like, maybe that doesn't affect even your starting pitcher, but like the lineup didn't produce, right? So, I mean, now they have that, like, it's gone. Contreras basically said it. I can't wait for this day to be over. I just want to get past this. I want the day to be over, the date to pass, basically. So, I mean, it's passed, right? After today, they played the game. It was, not long after the deadline. Let's get a W. Let's beat those fucking disgusting, dirty, most boring city in the world. Just a disgrace everywhere. Those dirty, disgusting Redbirds in their own boring city. I would love nothing more to do that than to do it after the deadline with these guys hanging around when, hey, we can get up for it again, right? We can get up for it again. We know they're playing tomorrow.
Absolutely. I'm right there with you, man. I just want to see Justin shit pump and the Cubbies get a W. We'll keep it real simple because I agree with everything you had to say. The pressure's off. The deadline's come and gone. There's no external factors. We saw it last year, right? They just started playing freely after the deadline came and went. So hopefully they can do the exact same thing again this year now that it is gone. As we mentioned, 6:45 tomorrow. And I believe, according to our little schedule in our little group chats, I believe it'll be myself and the Juice Man recapping tomorrow's game. And then you'll hear from Mr. Joey and Mr. Juice on Thursday to round out this Cardinals series. Quickly, one note, Joey, before I kind of wrap this thing up for us here, as dropped in the comments earlier by our friend Alop. Some sad news this evening. Legendary broadcaster Vin Scully has passed away at the age of 94. Truly an icon. Yeah, it just broke while we were here recording live. So certainly rest in peace to Vin Scully, a legend. 67 years as the Dodgers broadcaster. That just shows how long and devoted that man was to baseball and to the craft of broadcasting. So certainly a loss. We wish the best and T's and P's to friends and family of Mr. Scully, and may he rest in peace. A legend, a literal living legend, is what he was for a long time in the broadcasting arena, just in baseball in general.
He's the only guy, man, that could call a game by himself and be the play-by-play guy that I would actually listen to. I don't know. I know other guys have tried to do it. He's the only guy that can call a game play-by-play and tell a story and be the color analyst and do it all and tell the stories that he would tell. Mm-hmm. Vin Scully, man, that's a shock to me. I didn't think that happened. I didn't even, wasn't expecting to hear that when we were on here tonight. So that's, absolute legend, man. I don't know what else to say about it. Vin Scully was incredible. I'd watch Dodger games just for Vin Scully sometimes, I didn't care about what was happening in the game. The Dodgers could have sucked. I wasn't rooting for any team. I just wanted to hear Vin Scully, and just that's too bad to hear. R.I.P. to Vin Scully, man.
Absolutely, may he rest in peace. And like you said, man, I mean, you're incredible and great at what you do and what you did for a long time when people will just tune in just to hear you on the microphone. It's not even about what you're calling or what you're doing. True legend, and like we said, may he rest in peace. Certainly a little bit of a sad note to wrap up Cubs on Tap, but got to give credit and got to give proper respect to a great legend like the great Vin Scully. Well, Joey, before we do get out of here, I do want to remind everybody Cubs on Tap is the official Cubs podcast, the On Tap Sports Network. You can check out all of our great work over at ontapsportsnet.com and at ontapsportsnet on social media. You can follow the pod-specific accounts here for us at Cubs on Tap. We are at Cubbies on Tap, Cubbies. That is Twitter and Instagram. I am at Loose on Tap on the Bluebird app. Joey is at Joey Knows Nothing. That ends in IN because that stands for Win, baby. And you can also follow all of our other great contributors here, two of which you heard from last night at Juice on Tap and at Teddy Freddy 270. Be also sure to follow at Bulls Guy Rob Wegley doing some Cubs writing for us now as well, and at Brandon M. Kane. As you mentioned, he was very helpful with us today writing up some of the trade news or not news for that matter, as he wrote the Hap and Contreras article when those two were staying put. Bulls, Bears, Blackhawks, the drill, Cubs fans, and yes, we all have friends that like the Southsiders. Sox actually won tonight. They're actually happy. So be sure to send all your buddies and friends over to our friends at Sox on Tap for their White Sox needs as the team is covered so eloquently by our friends over there, even though they give us a lot of shit, but we still like them. We're all friends here for the most part until they start to talk shit, and then we can tell them to go.
They did nothing at the deadline, so we could tell them to, if they want to talk shit.
It's true. They went and got a left-handed relief pitcher. Very exhilarating. But Luis Robert is taking BP now. He's their trade deadline acquisition. And my buddy
you know what?
Earlier, and he said it in a negative way, like, oh yeah, that's what they're gonna say is he's their trade deadline acquisition. But I don't know what the Sox on Tap guys are gonna say. So for those that are intrigued and those that have friends that are White Sox fans, tell your buddies to go check out the boys at Sox on Tap. Once again, ontapsportsnet.com, at ontapsportsnet on social media, the On Tap Sports Network. Go ahead and check out what's on tap in Chicago sports. As we mentioned, Cubs on Tap, we will be back tomorrow after the second game of this Cardinals series. As I mentioned, it will be myself and it will be Juice. And then Thursday will be Mr. Ricotta and Mr. Juice. And then we get into the Marlins series when they're at home. We'll have some on-site coverage for you on Sunday. I will be at the game. And then Friday, I'm going to be hosting the show as well. And we might have a guest host, give Juice and Joey a little breather as Friday swoops in. But we'll announce all of that fun stuff as the week persists. Joey, my friend, always a pleasure. Unfortunately, the Cubs couldn't get it done tonight on the score sheet. But a really just mentally exhausting day is over. Now we put it behind us. Now we can just enjoy Cubs baseball for the rest of the season. So, my friend, what do you say? We get out of here the only way we know how, especially when they're playing the Cardinals?
Fuck the Cardinals.
And let's go, Cubbies.